Hi guys, it's Crystal. I hope you guys are all doing well today. I hope you guys have had a really good week. I'm filming a little bit later than I normally do, just because we've had things come up with the online schooling. I hope you guys are doing really well with it. It seems to be working here. We're kind of getting into a flow, so that's really great. Today is a special day for our friends to the south. I'm recording this on the 20th, so it's inauguration day for Joe Biden. I hope everything goes well with that as well. So if you don't know who I am, like I said, my name is Crystal and I do Canadian true crime or true crime with a Canadian twist. Once in a while throughout the year, we will talk about things that are specifically American or British or another nation. But for the most part, I do Canadian true crime. So if you enjoy my videos, hopefully you will, you'll hit that old like button, the notification button, the subscribe button, and leave me some comments. I like to look at the comments. They're always really interesting, and I love to read other people's theories on things. And of course, if you guys have been to this channel before, you know, and if you've subscribed, you guys know how much I love you guys and that I'm so thankful for you guys letting me into your living rooms or onto your phone or however you watch YouTube and just letting me talk. Today's case is one from the Northwest Territories. This is the last territory that we have to cover. We've got a couple more provinces, and then of course, we'll be moving on to talking about other things. Probably the last province I'm gonna deal with is Nova Scotia. I'm assuming that it's going to be a two-part video. It's not Gabrielle Wartner. It's on another woman, and she's really integral to Canadian laws. Also, guys, if you do choose to leave a comment, please no hate. There's enough hate in the world. We're just here to talk about things. I like to talk about things. Hopefully you guys will too. And these videos are for entertainment purposes or educational purposes only. The opinions that you hear, unless otherwise stated, are my opinions. I usually try not to put too much of my opinion in it because I don't want people to sway people one way or another. Everybody's got their own ideas. But if I specifically state it's my opinion, then you guys will know that it is. So like I said, let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about Yellowknife. Now, if you guys watched my last video on Amuzi Kakasik, I did mention Yellowknife. It's where his mother lives. Yellowknife is actually the capital of the Northwest Territories. It's actually also the best place to see the Northern Lights. They don't have as much pollution as we do, so you can see them really, really well. Yellowknife itself didn't spring up until about the 1930s, and it's actually literally built on gold. Prospectors found large gold deposits there, so it brought all sorts of people to come in and populate what is Yellowknife. It's actually called Yellowknife because of a tribe of Dene natives that lived there. They were known as, this is not my term, this is the term I was given, the Copper Indians or Yellowknife Indians. Because of this, they would trade their copper tools that they had made from the coast, the copper that they found on the coast of the Arctic, and bring them back to trade. And that's why it's called Yellowknife. So like I said, in the 30s and the 40s, a lot of people were drawn to Yellowknife because of the prospecting. Everybody wanted to try their hand at getting rich. And it's not only built on gold. There's silver deposits there, tungsten from what I've heard. There's diamonds there, but gold was the specific one. So in 1948, a place called the Giant Mine opened. Now, the Giant Mine produced large quantities of gold. It had a very big vein running through it. When I say vein, I mean a vein of gold ore. So there was a very big deposit of it going through there. And it actually produced steadily until the late 80s, 90s. It was still producing gold, but it steadily produced gold until the late 80s. It became a mainstay of the Northwest Territory, of the Yellowknife and the Northwest Territory. It became a mainstay of its economy. So by 1990, Giant Mine was actually sold to another mining company called the Royal Oak Mines. They bought this, and their CEO was actually a woman. Her name was Peggy Witt, but she was known for being really tough and stubborn. She was very hard-nosed. She didn't rub everybody the right way. Because of I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that she was a woman and mining is seen to be kind of like a manly job. But she was, from what I heard, a very tough and stubborn and hardworking woman. So, like I said, in 1990, they bought that. So by 1992, they noticed that the mine was not producing the way it should be. They were going to have to cut costs in order to keep the mine running. So what they wanted to do was take away the workers' perks. They also wanted to toughen the disciplinary measures they used against workers. I'm going to assume against ones who they thought were being lazier. And they also wanted to cut workers' pay by 6%. During this time, the price of gold had also fallen by about 50%. So they would need to do this in order to keep the mine producing. Or so Royal Oak did say. Now, the workers are actually unionized. About 230 workers did work at the mine at this point in time, and they made about $77,000 a year. Some of you might think for that time, which would be the early 90s, that's a lot of money, but mining is incredibly dangerous work. You have to deal with being underground all the time. They feel like they're really long shifts because of this. It's always cold. There's dampness. There's mud everywhere. You could accidentally blow something up or someone else up by widening the tunnels or by starting a new shaft. If you didn't know that much about explosives, there could have been sulfur. Well, from what I've heard, there are sulfur and diesel fumes, down there as well, and that can wreak havoc on people. Plus, it's a dangerous work area. You always have to be cognizant of the fact that a mine could collapse at any point in time. So it's very dangerous work. These people had to be paid well for what they were doing. Now, their union was actually the local number 4 chapter of the Canadian Association of Smelters and Allied Workers. So we're going to call it the CASAW, just so that we don't have to keep saying the other thing over and over again. So that's who the union they were part of. And this was actually a really small union, but it was very militant in the way it handled things. It did not like Royal Oak, and it did not like Peggy Witt. So the workers' union and Royal Oak were able to renegotiate a contract or a contract agreement in April of 1992. CASAW actually told the workers, the unionized workers, that they recommended that they accept this contract. And basically the contract said they would get paid depending on the fluctuation of the price of gold. So if the price of gold goes up, they get more money. If the price of gold goes down, their money gets cut somewhat. The workers didn't like this. 72% of them voted this down, and they voted in favor of strike. Their strike date was supposed to be May 23rd of 1992, but Royal Oak beat them to the punch. They actually locked the workers out in May 22nd of 1992. And attitudes were really disintegrating by this time. The workers' union and Royal Oak were battling against each other. It was a very tense and toxic atmosphere to work in, because in the Northwest Territories, there is a rule, a territorial rule, I'm not sure if it still exists, that allows for places there that when their workers go on strike, they're allowed to go and hire replacement workers. Now, this is not a rule that is used very often. I don't think they had used it for the 50 plus years before then, but they are allowed to do this. This is actually illegal in other parts of Canada. I'm going to assume a lot of parts of Canada, but the Northwest Territorial Government allowed them to do this. The federal governing laws of that territory allowed them to hire these replacement workers. And that's what Royal Oak did. They hired replacement workers. Of course, the CASAW unionized workers did not like this. As the days went by, negotiations were totally out the window. Everybody's attitude was shot. There was menacing on both sides, both parties, and it was just not a good area to be in. Now, the workers set up their picket lines all around the mines. And the only way for Royal Oak to get the replacements in and over the line was to either bring them there themselves or actually use a helicopter. They actually had to helicopter some of these replacement workers in. The replacement workers were fed and housed there in temporary shelters beyond the picket lines. So the first night of the picket, the first night of the strike, was very violent. Workers threw rocks at the buildings. They burned down a shack. They actually felled a telephone pole, or I'm not going to call it a telephone pole, an electric transformer. They actually felled one of those, essentially cutting the power to the mine. They had signs calling Peggy Witt Miss Piggy. They hurled intimidations at the other workers, and they did this repeatedly. They would use air horns to keep them awake at night. And they also assaulted a guard on the very first night of the picket. So things were going downhill really, really fast. And this actually bled out to the community as well. Because you had people that were on the side of the workers and you had people that were on the side of the mines. So there was a lot of division in Yellowknife itself. In a retaliation attempt, Royal Oak actually hired Pinkerton guards to come out and work. They were throwing their own mud. They would call the picketers names, and of course they were using the replacement workers, and they were ignoring the picket lines. They were doing business as usual, but they hired Pinkerton guards in an attempt to stop the violence. Now, I didn't know Pinkerton guards still existed, actually. What I know of Pinkerton was the Pinkerton detectives that would come in and help solve cases, but the Pinkerton guards and detectives actually are still around, and they are now basically known for breaking up strikes and for dealing with labor unions. So they came in. This steadily deteriorated into June. In June, they had another night where the workers would break windows. They assaulted the Pinkerton guards, and as such, the RCMP actually hired a riot squad from in Edmonton. So they had done this a little bit before, and the riot squad actually had to start shooting into the crowd. Now, of course, these were either rubber bullets or these were warning shots, guys. So they fired warning shots to try to assuage the violence, but it was just escalating. During this time frame too, a number of people, they described it as a mob of workers. They came and they were wearing balaclavas to try to hide their faces. And these were the guys that were responsible for breaking the windows as well as assaulting the guards. So Royal Oak, of course, in its revenge, fired 38 of the workers that they believed to be involved. And one of them was a guy named Roger Warren. Now, Roger Warren was 49 years old at this time. He was born December 17th of 1943. He was a father of 2 young girls, and he was a husband, but he was also known as the Ace because he had great expertise in the area of blasting and also rock breaking. He was very, very good at this. I would call him an expert. He knew what he was doing. So they fired him as well as 38 or 37 other workers. And I guess in an attempt to stop the violence, maybe believing if these workers weren't there, then it would be better. Some of these workers were part of an even smaller, more radical group that called themselves the Cambodian Cowboys. Two in specific, Al Shearing and Tim Betger, were responsible for further break-ins at the mine. And they would do this throughout June and in the summer months. One time they planted a bomb at the satellite or on the satellite dish of the mine to blow that up. One time they planted a small bomb in the building that housed the ventilation systems that led into the shafts to blow that up. They may have also been responsible for the rock breaking incidents. I would say that the Cambodian Cowboys were definitely part of the 38 that were fired. They were much more militant than perhaps other workers would have been. And they also would write derogatory terms and stuff in the tunnels, calling the replacement workers all kinds of names. Now, these replacement workers were actually hired from all around Canada. I don't think I mentioned that before, but I did want you guys to know that the workers weren't just specifically from the Northwest Territories. They had workers from other provinces and territories as well. Things disintegrated even further. There was more violence, everything else, all through the summer months. There was no getting through to either side, intimidation on both sides. Everybody was calling everybody else names. And like I said, it bled into the community of Yellowknife for sure. It divided families. Some were for the mine, some were for the workers, and vice versa. It would divide friendships. It destroyed friendships because you might be on the side of the replacements, whereas your friend might be on the side of the workers, or vice versa. And suddenly that wasn't working anymore. They actually were writing to the newspapers, pleading with the government to step in and please help before someone gets killed. The Northwest Territories government did actually go to the federal government and beg them to help and force an arbitration between the two sides. So they would have to agree on something. But the federal government basically told them it was a private dispute and that they had to handle it themselves. On September 18th of 1992 at 8:45 a.m., 9 workers were in a mine car. So, you know, I'm sure you guys have watched Scooby-Doo before. This is what I always think of, Miner 49er. The shafts that run through will have mine cars, so little shaped cars that have wheels on them that run along a track, and you can load minerals and take workers from place to place in them. So 9 workers were in this car. 6 of them were CASAW employees. 3 of them were replacement workers, and they hit a tripwire, and the tripwire caused a huge explosion. All 9 men were killed instantly. The explosion was so huge, it sent shock waves throughout the rest of the mine. But it was also so massive that it literally blew these guys to bits. Their body parts were actually littered all over the tunnel. And this was in the 750-foot drift, so it was quite far down. And bits of their bone and flesh were embedded in the rock ceiling. Now, originally, CASAW workers that were not involved in the strike, that were not involved in that, the militant areas of the strike, originally they thought it was an accident. And this made tensions in the community and at the mine go up even higher. It actually started literal fistfights in the streets of Yellowknife. The RCMP, of course, were called in, and they found blasting caps, and they also found bomb-making materials at this site. So the RCMP knew it was not a case of an accident, that it was definitely a case of murder. They had to bring in 300 other officers in order to look into this case. And I should also mention that by this time, by September 18th, it was probably sometime in August, some of the CASAW workers decided to cross the picket lines and go back to work. So now it's a mixture of CASAW workers who are really frowned upon by their own union and a mixture of replacement workers. So the RCMP had a huge job ahead of them in trying to figure out who had done this. As such, the actual CASAW workers suffered as well. They would get, they were called murderers by people in Yellowknife. They would get threatening phone calls, and they had their union hall was actually vandalized because people believed that somebody in the group was a murderer. Some people in the group were murderers. The names of the dead are, excuse me guys, just for 1 second. Chris McNeil, he was 29. Joe Pander, 55, Norm Oury, who was 53, David Vodnosky, 25, Shane Riggs, 27, and Vern Falowska, who was 36. I may have said his last name wrong. I would say Falowska, but it could be pronounced a different way. And these were actual CASAW workers. So 6 of the 9 were CASAW workers. The other 3 who were the replacement workers also killed were Robert Rousel, 37, Malcolm Soller, 58, and Arnold Russell, 41. So the RCMP brought in, actually, it was more than 300 workers to investigate what had gone on. This was actually one of the largest investigations by the RCMP. It was one of the most labor-intensive investigations, I should say, by the RCMP. Like I said, it involved over the 300 officers, and it took 13 months. Originally, they thought that Al Shearing and Tim Betker, remember the guys that had planted bombs at the satellite dish and also in the ventilation building, and they had also defaced certain things, and they had been involved in the mob in June. They originally suspected those guys. They were the prime suspects, but they didn't find any evidence that tied any one person to the crime or any, 2 people to the crime. There was actually very little evidence there. The one piece of evidence that the RCMP did have to go on was a set of tracks leading from an abandoned shaft right into the 750-foot drift. And they were made by size 11 Kamek boots. So of course, there was one man who was known to have worn size 11 Kamek boots. And these were fresh footprints. I do want people to know that they weren't just like laying there. These were fresh footprints. The one person that did own these boots that they knew of, and in this size, was Roger Warren. So the RCMP went to go and look at his boots. They requested to see them. He showed them, but the bottom of his boots, the soles of his boots, had been defaced. He had altered them in some way. So, of course, the RCMP conducted interviews with Royal Mine and their managers, with the CASAW workers, both involved in the strike and those that weren't, and of course the replacement workers. And they just weren't coming up with anything. They interviewed Roger Warren, and most of the RCMP didn't believe Roger Warren was a prime suspect. They just thought he had more information on the murders than what he was saying, except for one man. His name was Sergeant Greg McMartin, and he was an interrogation expert. He believed Roger Warren was guilty. In October of 1993, now they had interviewed him several times before this, but in October of 1993, during a 6-hour interview with Roger Warren and only Greg McMartin, no one else was in the room, he confessed. He actually then took the RCMP investigators down into the mine, and they were videotaping this, and he showed them how he made the bomb, how he set the tripwire, and the bomb was essentially sticks of explosives. So I'm going to guess TNT that were bundled together, but sticks of explosives. Since he was a blasting expert, I believe he should have known how much to use, but that gets ahead of us. And he also took them to, so he told them exactly how he made the bomb, exactly how the wire was to be tripped, etc. He then took them to a small pond and showed them like a satchel type bag inside that had triggering materials in them, materials for triggers in them. And he also took them to another river where they found a pair of burned size 11 Kamek boots. So I'm assuming those are the ones that he wore, and he was trying to get rid of the evidence. So they had all this, and of course they arrested him. Al Shearing and Tim Bettger were also arrested, but they were arrested due to the break-ins and the small explosions at the mine. And Al Shearing ended up getting 2.5 years, and Tim Bettger ended up getting 3 years for this. During this time that Roger Warren was in custody, they were actually able to negotiate a deal between Royal Oaks and CASAW. Originally, Royal Oaks said that they refused to negotiate any part of a deal until somebody was arrested for this crime. And because Roger Warren was arrested, they were able to negotiate a deal, which basically was the same deal they left behind. Workers' prices, workers' salaries being tied in to the prices of gold. If it fell, they'd get less. If it went up, they'd get more. They essentially agreed to the same contract that started the whole strike to begin with. Roger Warren actually did say that he didn't mean to hurt anybody in this explosion, that he only did this in order to scare the replacement workers and also make Royal Oak look bad, in order to embarrass them. I just have one small problem with this. He used sticks of dynamite, and the tripwire was beside the railroad tracks. So as soon as a mining car would go over it, or anything heavy would go over it, it would explode. Because he was a blasting expert, I would assume he'd know how much dynamite or TNT to use to just injure someone or scare someone, or he would have been able to place it in such a place that when it went off, it would have scared someone instead of right beside the rails. I just have a problem with that. But regardless, he did say he didn't mean to hurt anybody in this blast. So he actually went on, I should also point out that by December of 1993, 130 of the workers had gone back to work at the mines, and they had actually laid off about 1/3 of the replacement workers. The mine did shut down for a little bit, but it was only about a week after the incident. I guess because they decided to go back to work for whatever reason. So Roger Warren's trial started in September of 1994, and he actually pled not guilty. Now, I know you're wondering, he gave the confession, they have the videotape as evidence, but he recanted the confession. He claimed to be depressed at the time that they took his confession, and that he was basically strong-armed into doing it by the RCMP, Greg McMartin in particular. So he claimed that they forced him to give this false confession. Regardless, it didn't matter. He was found guilty and of 9 counts of second-degree murder, because remember, he said he didn't think anybody would get hurt by this. It seems premeditated to me, but regardless, I'm going to let that one go too. So, and he received life in prison. If you're not from Canada, life in prison here only means 25 years without parole. And he didn't get back to back. He didn't get consecutive sentences. it wouldn't have mattered anyway. The only way in Canada that they'll hold you in prison for longer than 25 years is if you're declared a dangerous offender. So he got 25 years without parole. And for that first decade, he claimed he was innocent. He told everybody he was innocent. He would never have done this. He would never have hurt anybody. So much so that actually in 1997, he tried to appeal this. Now, the Court of Appeal did not accept the appeal. They declined it. And he actually went to several of the Innocence Project groups, asking them to take on his case. They looked at his case, but they all declined to take it on. Now, in 1994, a lawsuit was launched on behalf of the deceased men's families, which actually blamed Royal Oak for what happened, blamed the CASAW union itself, and they also blamed the CEOs and managers there and the Northwest Territories government for what had happened. They, in 2004, received a $10.7 million settlement, but that was also overturned on appeal because the court said that nobody but Roger Warren had taken part in this. So all the other people blamed had no part in it. In 2003, Roger Warren changed his story, and he actually said, yes, I am the guilty person. I was the only one who did this. He claimed that he didn't, or he recanted his confession because he didn't want his family to think he could do something so stupid. That's the only reason why he recanted. He also gave evidence in the 2004 judgment that blamed, of course, the CASAW union, that blamed Royal Oak, and that blamed conditions at the mine, I believe, for causing the murders. He said that the CASAW union had so demonized the replacement workers that they were basically dehumanized in his eyes. He acted out because of this. I just have a quote, guys. Just give me 1 second just to get into it. Oh, I'm sorry. He blamed security, the CASAW union, and Royal Oak itself. He said that, and I'm going to assume these were the windows that were broken in the June mob. He said that if Royal Oak Security or Royal Oak itself had just put a screen and a padlock on the window he must have used to get inside, that would have stopped him. And he also said, like I said, that the union had dehumanized the replacement workers to such an extent that it made him more capable of the murders. He also claimed that stemming from the June incidents and the Cambodian cowboys. He also claimed that that was a reason for the murders. So I guess he did. Claim his part. I guess he did confess to it and his culpability to it. At least he finally did recognize that. In 2014, 18 years after his conviction, they let him out on day parole. And he was released on full parole at the age of 70 in 2017, stating, and I quote, "I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused," end quote. Giant Mine officially closed down in 2004. For some years before then, they had only been running on a skeleton crew and it wasn't producing very much. So the mine itself is actually closed down. And there is an offshoot to that itself. Apparently, Giant Mines and the area it sits on is now one of the most hazardous places for industrial waste and for environmental purposes on Earth. Apparently, a toxic dust is created by getting the gold and ore out of the ground. And because of this, it's an incredibly toxic place right now. Roger Warren actually died in 2019 at the age of 75, so only a couple years ago. And his daughter, Patty Johnson, said, and I quote, he is a very good man who made a mistake, and he has put in his time, end quote. She also said, quote, I know he wouldn't have intended to hurt anyone, end quote. Now, if you guys want further information on the giant mine than what I've given, my particular area of expertise is not labor disputes, so I hope I've been able to give the information well enough for you guys. But if you guys want to have a visual, the CBC in 1996 produced a made-for-TV movie called Giant Mine. And if you guys are interested in other labor disputes and union disputes, my brother actually gave me a list of several. So there's the Ford Auto Workers strike of 1945. That was actually in Windsor in Canada. There's Homestead strikes, so you guys can learn more about unions then, and the Haymarket strikes if you guys want to learn more about that. So that's it for today. Today was a short one, but I do want to know what you guys think. Specifically, did Roger Warren actually act alone, or was this a seed planted to him by the Cambodian cowboys? I believe he did the actual setting up of the bombing himself. I don't think anybody else was involved in the actual act, or actus reus, of setting up that bomb. But I do believe that he may have been counseled by other people, and it could have been Al Shearing and Tim Becker. That's just my belief. I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that he acted alone? Do you guys think that Roger Warren was forced into being a killer because of his union? What do you guys think of the unions in general? Do you think that the unions had such power that they could dehumanize people? Do you guys think it's right or moral for them to be able to say these things about replacement workers? Roger Warren was taught, and I know this term too, that anybody that crossed a picket line, and he was taught this by the union, but he also knew this himself, was a scab. And that was one of the things in the interviews that he put forth that Greg McMartin noticed, was the disgust that he had on his face and in his voice every time he mentioned the fact that it was legal for the Northwest Territories at that time to use replacement workers, which he did call scabs. Do you think it was right for the union to dehumanize these workers? They were humans. They were just individuals looking to make money. What do you guys make of the fact that they actually just agreed 18 months after the strike had first started, that they actually just agreed to basically the same contract that they rejected in the first place? Do you guys even think that the strike should have happened in the first place? Who do you guys think was at fault for the strike? Do you think it was Royal Oak itself trying to change everything and trying to cut costs and take away perks and take away salaries and being tougher? Or do you think that it was the unionized workers themselves maybe not being able to back down a little bit? Like, in my point of view, they should have just taken the 6% pay decrease and gotten on with life. But that's my point of view. I really want to know what you guys think, but specifically, do you guys believe that Roger Warren acted alone? Do you guys think that this was something in Roger Warren anyway? That's the end of it, guys. I do hope that you guys all have a really, really, really good week. I hope that if you guys are homeschooling, that it's going well. I hope that you guys are celebrating our neighbors to the south and that everything goes well for Inauguration Day. And I hope that you guys will please like, subscribe, share this video if you want, and leave me some comments on what you think. This was actually something else that we haven't talked about before. This was actually a case of mass murder. We've talked about serial killers before. We've talked about just singular killers before, but today we talked about mass murderers. If you'll remember, that's 4 or more victims, no cooling off period, same area, same point in time. What do you guys think of that? let me know, guys, and hopefully I will see you guys back. Hopefully you'll like, you'll share, you'll subscribe, you'll hit that old notification bell that'll let you know when I'm back in your living rooms, on your phones, on your tablets, on your computers, and hopefully that you guys will enjoy this. I do have a picture of Roger Warren. If you will just give me one quick second, I'm going to pull it up. Sorry guys, my preparedness level is so low today. I'm surprised I was even able to get through this. It has been an exhausting day, but we're gonna try. It's a pretty grainy picture, guys, so I'm gonna hope that you guys will be able to see it. But that was what Roger Warren looked like at the time. And if it'll let me, I don't know if you can see this picture down here. It's more like a thumbnail. That's what he looked like around 2019 at the time of his death. He did say that he was really sorry for all the pain he caused. I mean, that doesn't bring back anybody. I don't know if I believe that Roger Warren was capable of the act of murder without all the other things that came into play. I really don't know. What do you guys think? Okay, I'm serious. I am gonna go now, guys. I'll give you a chance to think. Hopefully you liked this video. Subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, leave me comments, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.